Hi everyone, delonewolf here and welcome back to EVE Talk, your weekly look at the market in EVE Online. And as always, we'll start with maybe a couple of quick news items. And first of all, there should be a live stream a little bit after EVE Talk comes out, where CCP is going to show us some of the new landmarks and the new routes. So yeah, when it comes to EVE Online, of course, I think most of us know that the graphics department is crazy good at CCP. And so they've been adding new landmarks and cool looking environmental effects in some of the systems. Some of it looks really impressive, so perhaps at some point I'll need to do a tour myself, but CCP is going to do that for us in a live stream, it seems, so that's very welcome. Just adding more differentiation between the types of systems that we have, and then just making the universe feel a little bit more alive and unique in some settings. I think it is a pretty good plan. And another thing that I want to mention is that the CSM elections are coming. Now, I'm not a candidate. Perhaps I'm going to disappoint some of you guys, but yeah, I just don't have the time to commit to that, to be honest. So, but I'll take a look at it. It's something that usually I don't pay too much attention to when it comes to like voting, democracy, and all that type of stuff. I'm like, no, let the people choose. I'm basically fine with whatever you guys choose. We will see how that goes. But yeah, the CCP, the player soundboard, you could say, the direct link to CCP. So the CSM is direct soundboard to CCP, and honestly, I mean, sometimes you don't see it, but I do think that the CSM is actually pretty helpful in like catching really glaring problems with plans that CCP has from time to time. Of course, they can't stop everything. We would all love to be able to play the game absolutely for free, get everything for free. That's just not really feasible. But overall, yeah, sometimes I do get the feeling that, all right, that's probably been like some nice CSM input that has kept us from trouble here and there. So definitely worth it if you're invested into the future of the game enough to maybe take a look at it and see if that's something you might want to do in the future, or inform yourself over the candidates that will start to be showing up, and yeah, just make your decisions and go out there and vote. Next up then, we'll take a quick look at the New Eden store as well, see if there's anything special happening over here. Got a couple bundles front and center, and then yeah, we're not seeing any more sales for the skins right now. Quick look at the services. That's still just bundle stuff, nothing special to report in the New Eden store. So we get to move straight to the market as always with some plex and stuff, and that's coming in at let's say 3 minutes. Like that. All right, and here we go. Let's go for the plex chart. You can see that we are going straight up to 2.4 million on the chart. Pretty nice increase right here. And I was saying last week, looks like perhaps we're starting to turn the corner, forming a bottom, and that players' expectations have turned towards inflation. I'd completely forgotten something that CCP actually announced there as well. It's that they are working on those special keys for the reserve banks for all the ratting in 0.0, and that is a lot of ISK that is ready to be pumped into the game. And I think that maybe there's a bit of speculation happening around that event as well, that is already starting to drive the price of plex up, because if you have more ISK, eventually, right, you are going to pump that into plex, or it's going to find its way into plex so that you can get 30 days game time. It's almost inevitable in the way all of that works, of course. So for the prizes, almost 2.5 million in Jita itself. Someone is coming in at 2.4 million, a bit aggressive because the buyers are practically at 2.4 million as well. And then if we go to the player-owned trade hub, yeah, it's pretty much the same. A couple of aggressive sellers, but then we go towards 2.5 million very quickly. And then the buyers, that doesn't budge that much either, just gets a little bit closer to that 2.4 million for the sellers. So yeah, expect these 1,000 plex to be snagged up pretty quickly by the market, and it's actually pretty much 2.5 million if you want to buy them. So that's a pretty decent recovery coming down from the 2.2 million range right here. The question, of course, will the trend continue? Well, I gave you guys the information. My feeling on that is that when those keys come out, there will be a lot of ISK that comes into the game, and as a result, that will drive prices up. This is my read on it. Don't take that as gospel, of course. Next up, the multiple pilot train certificate. This one is actually showing on the 5-day moving average a little bit of a different story here, a different expectation. We did go above 1.2 billion, but you can see at the tail end here already showing some signs of declining again. Sellers 1.25 billion, buyers 1.15 billion, pretty much I would say in a decent ballpark here. And we go up to 1.3 billion decently quickly, but I mean, you know, for the multiple pile train certificate market, 20 to 30 of these guys, that is actually not that easy to just all trade through. So yeah, for now, the multiple pile train certificates are keeping a break on the increase in price, whereas Plex has done a pretty nice recovery at this point. For the skill extractors, we have a chart that follows the same pattern as Plex. Now here, just like with Plex, something to note though, in the last 4 days or so, we are hesitating to go even higher. That is definitely quite noticeable. So skill extractors have also gone up. Sellers coming in at 276, practically 280 million for most, and then 271 million for the buyers. Pretty narrow margin here on that upward swing, and basically a nice little bottom formation. That is clearly visible here, but that's again, you know, your expectations on what's going to happen next is really important. I think if you want to decide whether or not you want to trade in skill extractors, Plex and things like that, maybe buy some or actually sell yours, because there's always two sides to the equation, right? You do know that there is ISK coming from these reserve banks, but you also know that this is probably something that won't really be easy to bot, and CCP, I would say, has been pretty successful on fighting the bots lately. It's not perfect, there's still some glaring issues here and there, but the players tend to really be against botting in general, and so I would say that they're having a pretty bad time at the moment, which has put I think partly some of that deflationary pressure, and I don't see any reason to believe that CP is going to let up on that part of the equation. So who knows, maybe the market over speculated a little bit already. It is a pretty nice recovery in a pretty short amount of time, and who knows, perhaps we are set for hesitation and then a slight downturn as well. We've seen double bottoms as well being formed in some of these markets, just as from time to time we know double peaks right here, 330, 330, that's twice, 3 times even, and then we start to go down. You know, we've seen the reverse pattern happen as well. Let's take a look at the impact on the skill injectors then. These are showing completely different sign of the expectations here. Despite the fact that we have this nice little increase in price for Plex, we have a continued decline on the 20-day moving average for the large scale injectors, and the 5-day moving average, I would say that this is very important, is staying below this 20-day moving average, and you can see that the daily average has started to push back down as well towards 600 million. So that's clearly more pressure on this market. 619 million for the sellers, but 585 for the buyers. That's actually a decent margin opening up. No one is buying these large scale injectors anymore unless they're getting a very good price, which is already substantially below 600 million. And so now here, you know that Plex is a part of these skill injectors through the extractors. This is definitely, in my opinion, a more interesting place to perhaps take a gamble. Try to buy really as low as possible and at the right time, which is always almost impossible to do, to time a market, especially one as complex as this one. But this is clearly continued pressure that is counter to the trend, and there may be opportunity here. I'm seeing this as, potentially you could have the perfect storm, right? If Plex continues to go up and then CCP comes out with something really cool that requires skill points, maybe even for some endgame guys, right? The recall change, something for compression skills, you can imagine stuff like that. All of a sudden you are going to get a very nice rush on those skill points, and then that could be the perfect storm for a large skill injector investor. For now though, it's basically 1 year straight down, and the chart is landing on 600 million, but those buyers are at 586 now, one coming in apparently, and then 619 for those sellers. In order to get these averages, someone is selling to these buyers, so it's not impossible to grab a large scale injector well below 600 million. Then these small scale injectors, this one, all right, again showing a slightly different picture, which is not what I expected, because if I'm not mistaken, you just divide large scale injectors into several more small scale injectors. I don't think there's any loss on that, and so here that actually starts to go back up already. I would say probably under the influence of plex. I'm guessing here that this one has more volumes. Taking a quick look at that. No, actually 2,500, and this all right, kind of weird. Then this has smaller volumes. Yeah, maybe it is a little bit more nimble and able to respond to changes to plex, for instance, a little bit more quickly. That could be the explanation for this jump up of the 5-day moving average going above the 20-day moving average. And so we're talking 126 million for the sellers and 118 for the buyers. Pretty interesting. Also putting some perspective on the large scale injectors. I would not be surprised if your window of purchase is closing very, very quickly if you're trying to grab those below 600 million. Finally, we also have the daily alpha injector for the injector segment, and that's pretty impressive. I thought perhaps we would see a trend break happening last week, because we were clearly not willing to go well above 45 million, but again it's that same story as with the largest right here. I would say it's a pretty important metric to keep in mind. The 5-day moving average never crossed that 20-day moving average. So the market psychology never really switched from an upwards trend at the moment. And yeah, we're getting closer and closer to that 45 million average. Sellers are coming in at 45 million or just above that, and buyers are still paying 40 million ISK. This is a completely different dynamic. The sellers are in charge in order to have these prices and this chart. Right now, basically no one is going, all right, I don't want my daily alpha injectors anymore. We're gonna sell to these 40 million. I'll take that rather than hold on to the item. No, everyone that wants those needs to go to these sellers that are asking that 5 to 6 million premium between sellers and buyers. So they're dictating the price, and so there was maybe a little bit of oversupply that happened on this surge here, but the psychology never changed. Daily alpha injectors, high demand and highly valuable. 45 million is what players want and expect for that item, which again is also a very achievable, overseeable goal for an alpha player. And then after that, we've got the hypercores that are mirroring plex quite a lot. Nice recovery as well, back above 250,000 ISK. 260 for the sellers, 235 for the buyers. So here I would say that it's the same dynamics as with plex that is pushing up the hypercores. Whether it is inflation expectation, all that is coming from the reserve banks, or potentially also just, the change in tone from CCP as well, where they're saying, yeah, we know at the moment the economy is basically, on lockdown. We are making everything as difficult as possible so that we can basically drain all that excess out of the system until we're pleased with that. But the next stage is going to be to open up more options for the players. And so obviously markets do like to run ahead of what's happening so that they can take a profit, and that may just be what's happening right here. Let's move on to the mineral market. That's going to be at 1320. All right, as always, we will start with the smallest price item. Here is titanium, at least it is now. Pyrite actually used to be below titanium for quite a while. This one basically touched 7 ISK and is now making a sideways movement. Here again, I would say it's that same thing, right? 5-day moving average, 20-day moving average, they're slowly meeting at a certain price point, right? 5-day moving average is not all of a sudden diving back down on oversupply or anything like that. So this really does feel like a more stable situation at quite the higher volumes though, so that continued demand for titanium is still alive, and in my opinion will not last. Once the patch hits for the industry changes, their demand should really drop off, and so this means that we're still selling at almost 7 ISK for titanium. I'm going to take GTI itself here. Buyers are at 646, and I would take this opportunity to sell if you are mining titanium. If you get titanium lying around, I would take this opportunity to sell. You're getting 7 ISK, which has always been a decently good price. Definitely not a loss if you're turning that into ISK at the moment, historically speaking. Right, 6 ISK is where you could go either way. 5 ISK, no, be more patient. That's mostly been my way of looking at this. So you're getting a pretty damn good price, but I don't think that that's going to last. I actually think that with the industry changes and how much less titanium is needed in those Excel sheets and things like that, I personally do expect that perhaps we'll see a pretty sharp drop in the average values for titanium. The new average may not be, around that 6 ISK range. It actually may be a little bit lower. Then for the pyrite market, get a little bit of a pullback, and this is maybe a bit dangerous. Here we do have the 5-day moving average crossing the 20-day moving average, saying we clearly overshot a little bit and we are probably going to settle down from even this range. It's still at 28 for most sellers, 28.50 in fact, 26 for the buyer. So I would not be surprised. You can also see an aggressive seller is saying, that's just taking too long. I'm selling at 26.12, just above these buyers, and so I would not be surprised that we would be landing at around 26, and that then the buyers would slowly move back down here as well. There's still strong demand. You can see that from the volumes here, but it's pretty obvious that 30, 35 is too much. The market is saying that that's not where pyrite is expected to land after the patch hits, in my opinion. Then we've got the Mexalon market here, different story. Still pulling away, 20-day moving average really pushing up, 5-day moving average still pulling up as well towards 200 ISK in JITA. 200 to 205 for the sellers, 192 for the buyers. Well, if you're happy that titanium is going to probably become a little bit cheaper after the patch, for Mexalon it's really looking like a big premium is still on the books. This is a crazy good price. My historical reference price for Mexalon, from my experience, and I don't even have the full experience of all the years that EVE Online has been out, of course, but has been like 75-ish, right? That's been a normal price where you could say, yep, sell, it's all right, keep it, maybe you get a better opportunity later. Seeing 200, 205, and then still having this trend right now showing, yeah, that's probably what the market's looking at. 200 ISK for Mexalon is a very good price. And so I would say, obviously, if you're mining in high sec, try to find sources of Mexalon. That's probably going to be your best ISK per hour. After that, we've got the Isogen market that had a really nice moonshot up to 70, and that has very quickly, in a matter of, what would that be, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 days, recrossed right back down here, settling above 50. So we do have a premium that we're paying, but it's not that much. 55 for the sellers and 52 for the buyers. But here, of course, the story is a little bit different. We know that someone was still holding almost 2 billion units of Isogen. I think they've learned their lesson from putting all that Isogen up on a single sell order. But as a result, you do get 50 million sold here, 40 here, another 28, 21 here. And then down here another 120, another 175, another 50, another 72. These are very, very big volumes that are still being worked through the economy. And so you can see how we shot up to a 70, maybe even more range. What did we shoot up to? A 70 range. But then, from time to time, price points are saying, all right, well, I'm going to try to dump here a good amount. I'm going to try to dump here a good amount. I mean, this is definitely smarter, because on potentially stuff happening like big destruction or some speculation, at least 50 million units, that's doable. Eventually that's absorbable by the market. 2 billion units of Isogen, that's almost impossible to absorb. And so now whoever has those items, I would not be surprised that a big chunk of those are on the market, but on a slope this time, so that we don't have this right here where the chart really could never break out above, I think it was like a 46, 45-ish price range. So we could just never break out from this, because that huge amount of Isogen was just constantly going to hit us. Now here, at exactly the right time, this was super fortuitous by the way, that order was pulled, and then CCP made the announcement, here are the industry changes. So there was a little bit of a rush up here, up to 70. That was too much. It's recovered, and it's probably too much because of all of the Isogen that's still out there. But now from here out, my personal expectation is that we could see that slow upwards trend, because to me this does feel a little bit smarter, right? A little bit like, okay, if I'm selling 50 million units below 55, and then my next 50 million above 55, and then we go towards 60, and then we go towards 70. That way, whoever is selling that, I think, will get a much better return from this strategy. Although it's still 2 billion units that will have to be absorbed by the market. So he's basically in control of the Isogen price. Whoever holds really big stocks of that does tend to have control this way. So this is very cool to see. We will see in the upcoming weeks and probably months if my prediction here holds true. But I do believe that we will start to see a slow upwards trend here now in Isogen. At least potentially we can see that because I think supplies from Losec, they should not be enough compared to keep this up, to keep 50 million, another 50 million, another 70, 120 million, to keep that up. Compare that to the Mixelon numbers here, right? They're struggling to get 20, 30 million units, so 120 million units of Isogen, which is not mined in HiSec, should be that much harder. So yeah, that's my read on this. Very interesting in my opinion. Then we've got the Noxium market next. That did know a slight period of price above 2000 disk, crazy good prices. I do think that has incentivized a little bit of supply coming online as well. We're still above 2000 for the sellers, but the buyers are at 1900 here. They're a bit careful. So I would not say actually more supplies. Yeah, maybe a little bit, because these average prices here do indicate a little bit of quick selling. And so they may be a little bit too aggressive here with their upwards push. Noxium above 2000. Maybe players are like, all right, you know what, maybe it's worth it to go mine out there, or to just be patient and not just throw all that disk into Noxium for my production cycles. And the average price going down, but the sellers not, is clearly showing a little bit of struggle. I would say that the market is trying to find itself, and for now maybe those suppliers are being a bit too aggressive on the price. Then we've got the Zydrine market that also knew a push up to 2000 disk. Here, very quick, switch in the mindset from the market here. 5-day mover straight through that 20-day and going down to less than 1500 disk. So that's a 1500 for the sellers, even 1400 for one, an aggressive one again here as well, 1300 for the buyers. So this really has, bottomed out, dropped off all of a sudden. It's on a decent chunk of supply, although again pretty much in line with what you would expect. 2-3 million units are the big sell orders, but this jump up to 2k has basically caused a little bit of a move. I would not be surprised if this has also caused basically some imports all of a sudden or you could say from the supplier perspective, export into JITA, that all of a sudden make a lot more economic sense if you can sell for 2000 disk. And that has probably brought on a little bit too much supply, crashed the price back down here to a far more reasonable 1500, which has caused a new inversion. Zydrine, which used to be far more expensive than Noxium, is now less expensive than Noxium. And then, that's still a full reverse situation as well, with Megasite basically staying in that 600 to 700 band most of the time. 663 for the sellers and 632 for the buyers. Pretty narrow margin. What is noticeable is slightly higher supplies. 10 million is almost possible on some of these volumes. So I still think that there's some more sources of Megasite out there that are finding their way through the market and that are keeping these prices in check. And then finally, the final mineral, of course, here is Morphite, not willing to go below 62.5, so that's actually jumping back up again. 68,000 for the seller, 62 for the buyer, still very, very expensive. A little bit of pressure on the price, maybe some more production starting to come in, or perhaps also a little bit of dumping that's carefully being done on that announcement that the CCP was looking into Morphite needs for the market. But who knows, maybe they're very happy with these super expensive prices. It is Tech 2, it is that step up, that expensive, more performing module, and so as a result, who knows, perhaps CCP is not planning to do anything, but I do think that they'll eventually look at it, because previously, like 6 months ago, a year ago, they were quite happy with like 10,000, 12,000 Morphite range. So this is such a big change. I'm not sure if they actually want to keep that, but that higher price cost is definitely super visible here. Next up, we have the PI market coming in 24.35. Let's take a look at these. Here is the broadcast nodes. That one is seeing some pressure, of course, after a very nice recovery up to 1.75 million. I think some more supplies will be putting some pressure on that. Almost 1.7 for the sellers, 1.4 for the buyers, but definitely well away from the bottom. So slightly below average, definitely a decent recovery, and that will probably last us a little bit of time. The real question, of course, is will that rush on structures for more reactions, because we will need a lot more reactions in the economy come the industry changes. Will that last for a longer period of time, really mean sustained higher demand for these goods, or are those groups ready at this point and will we start to see a sustained decline? That's the gamble I think you're taking. Construction blocks up slightly but still not fully recovered. Well, 9,600 for the sellers. We'd need to be above 10k to see a normal situation, but it's slowly getting there. 7.8 for the buyers though. They're saying nope, no need for us to rush into anything. We are staying super low on our buy prices. Consumer electronics, a little bit of a bump as well, but you can see that same hesitation. Sellers at 8,000, 8.3, trying to get up there, very quickly actually. Less than 8,000 for the first seller. Bottom of the screen here, 9.4. That's definitely a very big swing up in not a lot of goods. And those buyers, 7.4. They're still saying, we want that cheap consumer electronics. And looking at these averages, they're still, being dumped to quite consistently. Coolants are slowly pushing up. I would say here fuel needs, there's some fuel needs in some production cycles, more needs for those reactions as well is going to increase the requirements for fuels, and so some coolant purchases is clearly happening, although it's that same picture again. 8.4 for the sellers, 6.9 for the buyers. Very large margin. So that upswing here, consumer electronics price dictated by the buyers, coolants price dictated quite a bit more by the sellers. Not fully, but definitely a little bit more. Cryoprotectant solutions next, flat at 100,000. There's not that much to say. These PI goods related to implants are at the moment basically also in a holding pattern. So to me, this is still wait for the best opportunity. I would say buying below 100,000 is quite okay. Be as aggressive as possible, I would say, on those buy prices. Try to grab as cheap the item as possible in the amounts that you feel comfortable with, and that's basically your preparation for when there's a new implant set. There you go, you're ready and you'll be able to take a profit. But really here it's all about fishing for those low prices. Enriched uranium is also coming back tied to fuels, so that is a pretty decent recovery. Almost 10,000 is for the sellers, 8.7 for the buyers. Forced up a little bit here, so we're definitely seeing some upwards pressure, I would say, in the fuel-related PI materials now, whereas advanced PI like integrity response drones, a nice recovery up to above 2 million, but it doesn't last that long. 1.9 now for the sellers, 1.75 for the buyers, so a slight drop off here as well. Mechanical parts still staying pretty low despite being tied to fuels. Too easy to produce is going to be my guess here. 7.7 for the sellers, 7.2 for the buyers. Narrow margin, but yeah, definitely not at a great price. Nanites, a little bit of a jump up, so here and a little bit more disparity between sellers and buyers, I would say. 6,000 for the sellers, 5.4 for the buyers. They've probably been forced up a little bit. I would be patient again, wait for the chart to really bottom out, be well below 5k. That's when you can try to grab some. Nanofactory is showing some signs of pressure as well. Went to 900,000, 860 now. So that's it's that story basically. Organic mortar applicators also, after spiking up to 1 million, basically full recovery. And if this one data point is actually the 1 year high point at 115, yeah, it's that story, right? In my opinion, it's the battle. Do you expect demand to be sustained for a longer period of time, or do you think that eventually all the groups will have their needs met and they'll have their structures, they'll be able to do all of the all of the extra industry that they need, and so yeah, we'll start to get back on that downward trend, perhaps even towards the bottoms. So same thing for recursive computing modules, and then robotics tied to fuels slowly trying to make its way back to 70,000, which is still, in my opinion, 30% below its normal price range, but at least it's slightly up. Self-harmonizing power cores, that one is staying quite strong at 2 million, so I would say be a little bit careful here. Selling for almost 2 million, 1.8 million for the buyers. If you have some of those lying around, looking at all the other advanced PI materials, I would maybe try to still sell them. Don't spook the market though. Sterile conduits, it's that same little pressure here. Yukami superconductors back below 75k. So 68 for the sellers, 63 for the buyers. Same story, right? You've got this July spike here, so that's implant related. Wait for 1 year low points and then perhaps try to buy some. Wetware mainframes still holding on decently well as well at 1.8, yeah, actually 1.84 million for the sellers, 174 for the buyers. Not that bad at all. So pretty, I would say, readable story here in PI. There was quite a nice rush on advanced PI because of the industry changes as well, and there was already perhaps some speculation and things like that on all of the destruction probably happening in the war with stuff needing to replace. So basically a perfect storm for a recovery. I would say 75%ish for most advanced PI materials, but now of course, well, we know what's up, or at least we think we know what's up, and you know, it's this battle. Are they ready? Do they have everything that they need, or will there be more needs that will need to be met down the road? And then fuels going up as well, of course, as a consequence of that. Next up, advanced moon mats, but first a quick drink. All right, like that. And so here, yeah, we're still looking. I would say for the Tech 2 market to absorb the Marauder change, and then I'd say it's probably a little bit in flux as well, because I personally am fully expecting a dev block on Tech 2 production to drop after this. I would not be surprised that CCP will visit that as well. So let's get started. Crystalline carbonite for Galente went to 1 year high point. A little bit of downwards pressure here, obviously. That full premium not too realistic on the long term, and then 5-day moving average crossing 20 days, and we're continuing to go down. So here we do have, in my opinion, a little bit of a market saying, hey, hold on, that's perhaps way too much, way too quickly. And we would not be surprised that we would need to go back down quite substantially, and so a bit of dumping is probably happening here as well. 202 for the sellers, 186 for the buyers. Still very expensive, of course. And then we've got the Caldari ones, which is titanium carbide. Same story here again as well. Moonshot up to 350, 1 year high point, probably a high point since a very long time. And then we have that, all right, this is maybe a little bit too much too quickly, more supplies potentially coming online as well, and as a result we're back down, but still, you know, 270 for the sellers, 227 for the buyers. That is still very much a high price compared to just 3-4 months ago, where, you know, you could grab this stuff for 150. Then we've got the Fernite carbide that is doing a nice double top. So this one, I think, also influenced by the war, which was this spike here and this spike here up to 200, 175 because of the doctrines used by the Imperium. Then here went up to 200 again up to 200, and now we're recovering. But you know, it's 170 for the sellers, 170 for the buyers. So here they're basically meeting each other, despite the fact, yeah. Oh, so we could be landing here already at a 170. Obviously 200 for Galente. What was it for titanium carbide here? 270-ish. Yeah, 270 for Caldari, and then Minmatar, unfortunately the least popular bit right now, still at a high price, but yeah, 170, so obviously a little bit less popular. And then we get tungsten carbide for Amar, that did go up to well above 250. Also that same thing happening, like, all right, that was too much too quickly. More supplies probably coming online as well, and we're still at 220 though for the sellers, 200 for the buyers. So that 200-ish range seems to be doable. That would make that Minmatar number quite a bit more disappointing. But overall, very expensive carbide materials. Then we've got our metamaterials. So let's take a look at those if I can find them. Here we go. Photonic metamaterials for Galente. All right, bit of a move up in the last month or so, but no real response to what happened in the carbides. So this is basically flat, just a little bit above the bottom. 13,500 for the sellers, 12,800 for the buyers. Not much to say. Then we've got the next one for non-linear for Caldari as well. This one did know a spike up to 30k, almost 35,000 in fact, and is basically still on the recovery road for that one. 23,000 for the sellers, almost 22,500 for the buyers as well. Narrow margin, still paying a pretty big premium. Yeah, Caldari production did stand out for its volatility and its popularity. After that we get Minmatar, so expect a far more stable situation here. Exactly, also a peak but quick recovery, and we're basically back below average already. 16.5 for most, for a couple sellers, 17.5 for most you could say, and then 15,000 for the buyers. Quite a big difference again. Terahertz metamaterials for Amar, late spike, 1 year high point 25,000, but very quick recovery as well. 18,000 for the sellers, almost 17 for the buyers, back on a average, slightly below average price very quickly. So very mixed picture, I would say, in the production. Did I forget Galente, or I already forgot it? Photonics, yeah, slight recovery, but also still below average. All right, so very interesting. Definitely a big difference between Caldari, between all of them in fact, with I would say Caldari volatile, super expensive, Galente less volatile and just a step down, but then Minmatar, you know, way less volatility except to the war spikes, and then Amar super stable most of the time, and then a big spike up that was actually rivaling what happened with the Caldari equivalents. So very, very different stories depending on the empire's cycle for Tech 2. After that, some other materials, so these are more for like the general trends, and we had a bit of a recovery over the last couple of months that I think is starting to be under pressure now, because there's still more ISK that's currently flowing into the minerals with that rush on the current industry processes before the changes that are coming. Then we've got some is obviously flowing into Plex as well. Tech 2 ships were quite high, Marauders, all of that is starting to go up. Probably some speculation happening as well in the capital, super capital market, right? Everyone is expecting those prices to go up substantially, and so the value of what's already existing is bound to go up as well, but that requires ISK, I think, if you want to do some trading in that. So overall, I would say that there is still that pressure on a lot of stuff that should show through in, for instance, the other advanced materials, and that you can see that here we're breaking through the 70k fermionic condensate, and 60,000 for those buyers, so they're opening up that gap very quickly. The ISK just isn't flowing into this market anymore. Ferrogel had a very nice recovery, but now seems to be suffering a pretty sharp decline, 36 to 35,000. Let's get that, so that's back down here, back below average, and then I think the pressure is bound to continue on not enough demand. Fullerites, right, pretty decent recovery as well. The pressure is mounting. Hypersynaptic, especially because that 5-day moving average crossing here again, in my opinion, is, you know, it's not like meeting at 1,000 ISK. There's definitely a danger, yeah, at 936 that those buyers just, you know, keep going lower and slowly drag that price back down. Hypersynaptic fibers, it's definitely under pressure. Nano transistors also, you know, crossing 5,000 without too much effort, crossing that 20-day moving average, and then those buyers are down to 4.7, and the sellers are forced down very quickly to 4.9 as well. So they gotta keep up here with that demand drying up, I think. Phenolic composites under pressure as well, and then these ceramic fibers that did a very nice recovery at 500, managed to maintain that for almost 2 months, pretty impressive stuff, and now 480, so that's already down, and those buyers at 445. I think this is a pattern that we will start to see here, unless CCP comes out with some more interesting stuff when it comes to the industry changes. But you can, I would say, you're also starting to see some volume declines here. Expect pressure in the other advanced materials. Tech 2 ships next, coming in at 39 220. Like that. So let's see if we can get some speculative opportunities here. For now, Basilisk, Caldari, we know that that was nice volatility, but that was nothing compared to what's happening now. I would say on the spikes happening, right, both at Scarbyte and on linear metamaterials, no, not meta, yeah, I think so, are very expensive at the moment. And so, you know, we've got a 1 year high point of the Basilisk at 265 million for the sellers, 240 for the buyers. Basically a great sell opportunity if you manage to buy some of these and you were patient enough not to sell at, well, there were still very good spikes up to 230 million that happened here in February, in March, in December, in November, or if you can produce those, I think you're looking pretty good. But yeah, your margins right now, if you have to buy the materials right now, are probably under pressure as well. Then we've got the Cerberus that went up to 300 million ISK. That one is showing signs of pressure. All right, that to me is a good sign, because that means that potentially speculation still has its place in these Caldari ships as well. It's not just high prices. Here we are, and they're not going away. 285 for the sellers, 250 almost for the buyers. Definitely too late to or too early to say, all right, we're gonna buy these, but too late to sell at the best price, basically. Then we got the Guardian. For Amar, we do have this like April step up in costs as well. So we get this April step up in the price of the ships, but it was super stable before that. So I would say really wait for a pullback in price before jumping in. The Guardian is currently selling for 240 almost, buyers at 207. You know, that's that big margin there. And so if too much supply comes in, pushes that price towards that 207, and you can actually grab one for that price, which we've covered before, right? It's on the downward slope, so it's here, right, on the 250 going down to 230, and right at the tail end of this, that's where you can put up a buy order at 207, and that's going to actually happen. Once we're stopping that decline, it becomes harder and harder to make that buy price happen, and once you go up in price, it's just impossible. That's when you get put it up on a sell order and take your profit. So right now we're in that holding pattern. I would say wait for this to just fill up, get closer to this one so that you get a nice downward chart, and then put up a buy order just above the next one. Probably, you know, the more certain you want to be, the more aggressive you gotta be, of course, but that's what I'm looking for, especially in these Amar ships, because of the stability. You have to try to buy as close as possible to the bottom, which those buyers are already indicating, right? They're just there sitting on their buy orders, and so that gives you a very good metric. All right, let's say below 210 on too much supply, it is possible. So that's my view of that. Then we've got the Hound. All right, late bloomers. So this was something that was quite surprising. We did see jumps up in the Cerberus, in all logistics, I think. But the stealth bombers just never moved. Here it is. The Hound is now selling for 36 million. Running out of these 26 million for the buyers. Your buy opportunities here. If you bought just a couple of weeks ago, you'd have probably bought, let's see here, for 23 million and below. And now you're selling for 35 million easy. So this is your opportunity. It was yeah, kind of, I was like worried a little bit. Why aren't these moving? Is there an expectation that the Tech 2 frigates will also go down in cost, just like the Tech 1 frigates, destroyers and cruisers are basically going to become like the throwaway economy, you could say, that you know, it doesn't matter type of feeling. But no, here we do finally get a spike and an opportunity to sell Hounds, which I have, by the way. So I think, does it show up in my holdings? Yeah, I still have some Hounds that I bought at 22.5. So this is my opportunity to try and sell these. The Ekitursa showing a very flat and stable situation for now in the Triglavian cycle. 775 for the seller, 705 for the buyer. Still basically very expensive. Volumes not really moving anywhere either. So my expectation is still slowly more pressure on the price, but we could get countered, of course, by perhaps not enough. Oh yeah, there should be more ISK flowing into. We'll see how that works out. It's just one to keep an eye on when it comes to Triglavian content and prices. Then we've got the Ishtar last week. Perfect time to sell, of course, as we jumped up well above 250. We're still at 247, so you could still sell I think if you bought at the right time. 231 for the buyers. The pressure is starting to mount, but this is, I think, the unknown at this point. The previous bottom ranges, right, below 200 million, you know, grab an ishtar, you get a good deal. Those may not hold true anymore with all the volatility in advanced movements. Oh, we don't want to skip the Manticore. This is the real question. Here's what happened with the Hound, right? As we broke through and stayed below 25 for a bit, then here is the Manticore touching on 25, starting to go back up. We're talking 27 for the sellers, 23 for the buyers. Should you try to buy one of these? Well, the bad news is you're starting to see that inflection already. You're probably too late. Basically, those that bought in the 3 to 7 days ago, maybe to 10 days ago, something like that, on this downtrend, they would have an easy time for those buy orders, and we've probably bought close to 23 million. Now you're too late. You're gonna have to be aggressive, probably 26-ish, probably have to go already well above 25 to just snag a single Manticore. Maybe just a little bit too late, but yeah, your expectation, here's what the Hound did. Perhaps the Manticore could be next. Then we've got the Munin, so for Mimitar, bit of a jump up. Just on production costs, I would say 233 for the sellers, 214 for the buyers. Not one to jump in on right now. Then we've got the Nemesis that also bottomed out. That was obviously a buy opportunity that I called last week, I think. Definitely a bit of a trend break, close to 1 year low points, and we're starting to go back up already. So you could have bought, let's see here, in all likeliness, 21 million should have been possible. You're now selling for 24, almost 25. It's not great, but the question is, does this have enough momentum now that the Hound has basically been bought out? Perhaps it does. So the Nemesis, well, if you bought like 10 days ago, last week, managed to grab a cheap one, probably looking pretty good. If you want to jump in now, you're too late. We're on the upswing and those buy orders are not going to trigger anymore. Then we've got the Oneros, that's managing to defend 200 million. That's pretty good. 206 for the sellers, 179 for the buyers. But it's that same question now, of course. After this period of bottoming out for several months, we had nice volatility with, well, go below 160, you're looking okay, right? You buy in this region, you buy in this region. That is pretty damn good. And so on this chunk here, you could have easily grabbed the buy order down here. But yeah, now where is that range? That's the real question. And I think we may have to wait, you know, for the interest rate changes to hit, for then more announcements from CCP before we can actually, you know, really start to jump in on that. Until then, I would say your risk in Tech 2 speculation is up at the moment. Then we get the Panther. This is, of course, the battleships that have gone up substantially in price due to the Marauder changes, and it's able to maintain a nice premium, almost 1.5 billion for the sellers, almost a little bit above 1.3 billion for the buyers. And then here's the Purifier, finally also showing a little bit of volatility. So just about a week ago, you could have bought for, let's say, 26, and down here you could have bought for 24 million, pretty easy. Right now you're selling at 32 million. So the stealth bombers are alive this week, especially the Hound would be pretty good. And my holdings, no, oh, actually I have a Guardian at 184 still out there. What's it selling at right now? 230. Okay, I could take a profit on that one as well. All right, good stuff. Next up, we've got the Scimitar that's also moving up. So back at 244, so if about a month ago you bought these one at the bottom ranges, definitely looking good as well. Yet another, I would say, sell opportunity. Then we get the Widow, so that one is losing some of its premium. It did go up to 1.75 billion on the chart, still below 1.5 billion, so that's in range with the Panther. Buyers though are dropping off a little bit more quickly for the Widow, and then the Zealot has that typical, I would say, Amar problem, that we had this decline and too much stability. One exception here is a spike up to 230, but very slow market to react to all of this. 213 for the sellers, 192 for the buyers. Definitely not one that you want to speculate on too much. I in fact sold my Zealot at a loss, not having the patience to hold on for waiting for a better price. So that happens as well, of course. Next up, Tech 3 ships coming in at 49.10. And I think I forgot a timestamp, but I'll figure it out afterwards. So let's go for the destroyers first. As always, here is the confessor, and yeah, this was kind of my expectation. We did go up to almost 60 million, but we are already back down to that price range of 45 to 50 million. Sellers coming in at 48 almost, buyers at 44, and here is the 23, 20, 30, 30. So here's the 100 confessors that have basically, you know, sealed the deal, you could say. Below that, it's not that many. We're going from that 57 range very quickly down to that 48, but here is where, all right, those guys said, yeah, we're probably back in the normal range. So new supplies have very quickly taken care of this increased price, and so I'm actually expecting here stuff to not have moved too much. All right, so it did apparently dragging in a little bit of supply from the Hecate. That's touching 50 million. We're talking 50 million for the sellers, 46 for the buyers, on indeed a little bit of a lack of supply. But yeah, now the confessor should have some breathing room. I'm fully expecting the Hecate to basically slowly go back down on a little bit more supply. And then we have the Jackdaw that's also landing on 50 million. I'd say slightly more popular, and supplies already coming in right here. Here's 159 of them are going to keep this in check quite easily. So again, last 24 hours, then that's already starting to push that price back down pretty easily. And then we've got the Zwepel that also has a little bit of upper spread, but really nothing speculative that you could take advantage of, in my opinion. 46 million for the sellers, 42 for the buyers. So yeah, we had a confessor, you know, massive buy that happened right here. Did cause a price reaction, but you know, my read on this was especially, I think we saw these as well last week with these 160 here on the Jackdaw, that yeah, this would be absorbed pretty easily, and we'll get back to that 45 to 50 million price range quite nicely. Give this a couple of weeks without more disruptions, we're right back where we were before this spike, I would say, overall. So destroyers pretty good, healthy, enough supply, not too much, not too little, and the price range, yeah, as I said, 45 to 50, that is for pretty much all of these destroyers. And then in the cruiser markets, well, a bit more speculative stuff happening apparently in the Legion. Went back down below 180 and are back at almost 200 million for the sellers. Buyers are not budging at 177, and here we do have ships coming in, so I couldn't tell you what's happening here. Again, on lower volumes, increased prices, it's just that weirdness of the cruiser market, where I do think some manipulators are also, you know, playing the game here quite heavily. And the Loki is still pretty expensive at 192, 174 for the buyer. So again, pretty decent margin between these two. A bit more stable in the volumes, a bit more trading happening here as well. So this one is a little bit less crazy, I would say. It is the most popular one as well. Then we've got the Proteus that is, yeah, went up to 190 and is holding on decently well to that price on not enough supply. So this does make sense from an economic standpoint, right? There's almost no Protei left on the market, so it is very expensive at the moment. The weird thing is that this is happening in the least popular ship, probably. And then we get the Tengu that is being supplied, and so it's probably going back down. Yeah, 180 for the sellers, more supplies coming in the last couple of days, 170 for the buyers. But I would not be surprised that someone has a lot of Protei ready to pull the trigger. So they may just not want to spook the market here. For the cruisers, yeah, my take on this, really look for a trend break, look for something that, for instance, right now I would look to buy well below 150, for instance, on the Proteus, on the Tengu as well. I would look for this to really break through before I say, all right, I'm actually gonna buy one, and just I stick to one. I would always just stick to one on a gamble on the Tech 3 cruisers. So okay, interesting stuff. Definitely good that this was absorbed, as I expected, decently efficiently by the destroyer market. And then we're moving on to the extra product for the week, which is at 53.50. and I'm going to take a look at the ice products, because that's been a while, and well, with all of that mining complaining that I'm seeing from Nullsec with bells being gone, I'm kind of curious to see what that's looking like. We should also see more demand for fuel due to the industry change that were announced, so this could be interesting. Ice products, let's see, it's not that much, but this should give us a little bit of a feeling. And so yeah, here probably around announcement time, another spike up to 125, and we're actually still trending up slowly, although the 5-day moving average, this is kind of a weird one. 5-day moving average still below 20-day, and we're still going up, but selling for 129 almost for most sellers, 105. Heavy water does feel pretty expensive at the moment. Then we got helium isotopes, 1-year high point at 1250, almost 1300 for the sellers, almost 1200 for the buyers. That's a nice, complete reverse trend from what we've usually been seeing in these charts lately. With minerals also going up, tied to mining. All right, helium isotopes, 1-year high point. If you have any that you managed to buy at the low points, I wonder if I still have some. I'd have to check. Great time to take your profits, of course. So very, very noticeable. Hydrogen isotopes not at the 1-year high point, but definitely trading in that 1250 to 1500 range. So very expensive as well. 1560 for the sellers, 1350 for the buyers. Then we get liquid ozone also. All right, very much up there. Perhaps not the 1-year high point just yet, but 260 for the sellers, 250 for the buyers, showing that the buyers are forced up here. You want that liquid ozone, you're gonna pay the price. And another very nice recovery. Nitrogen isotopes, late breakout up to 1-year high point as well, to 1600 for the sellers. And then we get the oxygen isotopes, was already there at 1750, almost 1800, very expensive, very nice. And then strontium finally plateauing at 5k. Not a bad price either. So I like this, an extra product where we clearly see a trend, with, I would say, ice mining being very lucrative as well. Just like ore mining, your time is well spent there, because all of these are going for very expensive prices. And if you speculated on this, like me, it was like years ago, I do think I sold at a profit, but at a small profit. I was like, finally I can dump them, let's dump them. That would have been a mistake, but if you are someone with a long enough horizon and you did speculate in isotopes when those bottomed out, I think it was like 400 ISK or something like that, crazy prices, then this could be your time to shine and to take some massive percentage profits on these isotopes, because right now they are obviously super expensive, and so I would definitely try to take care of that if I were you. But that's just my opinion, of course. As always, you do what you want yourself, make your own decisions in all of this. It could be that demand will be robust enough that this is just a start, that is the new bottom. But yeah, clearly 1-year high point charts. If you like me, my strategy would definitely be buy low, buy at 1-year low points, and then try to sell at 1-year high points. This seems to be the right time for selling some isotopes. That's it for this week, guys. Thank you so much for watching, and as always, I'll see you next time.